Revolutions can change entire countries and set people on a whole new course that's completely different than where they were. And it can all happen in an instant. But how do they occur? How is it possible that people can rise up against a seemingly unchallengeable power? Well, the following revolutions were just that. Here are the 10 most important revolutions in history. Number 10 was the American Revolution. The American Revolutionary War was fought between 1775 and 1783 and saw Britain's 13 colonies battle against the British colonial government. The colonists had been increasingly upset with high taxes, fewer rights than British subjects, and little representation in British Parliament. The two sides had been meeting to talk things over, but violence broke out before they could reach a solution. Colonial delegates voted to form an army led by George Washington and went to battle on June 17, 1775. The Declaration of Independence was voted in on July 4, 1776, and on September 3, 1783, peace was negotiated and Britain formally announced the United States as independent. Number 9 is the French Revolution. The French Revolution took place between 1789 and 1799 and was partly inspired by the success of the American Revolution in giving power back to people. Many citizens were living in poverty compared to the monarchy and the church, who didn't pay taxes. The revolution was bloody and violent, and tens of thousands of people were killed in battle. Most of the aristocracy went to the guillotine, and the monarchy ended when the king met the same fate in 1793. The slogan "Liberty, Equality, and Fraternity" inspired revolutionaries to fight for major social reforms. Freedoms were given back to the people and the arts and culture spread. The revolution came to an end as Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power in the late 1790s and declared himself Emperor of France in 1804. I don't know how much you know about Napoleon Bonaparte, but he was about my height, which is pretty short. But he had a cool hat and a horse. I guess you need those things to be emperor. I'm never gonna be emperor. Number 8 is the Haitian Revolution. In 1791, Haiti was a French colony called Saint-Domingue, and their agricultural industry was a huge moneymaker for France. It relied heavily on slave labor, and nearly 800,000 Africans were enslaved there. Unrest began after the French Revolution that fractured the white and mixed race populations. The slave majority took advantage of this and staged a massive uprising on August 27, 1791. Nearly 350,000 people were killed as many different sides fought for power and control. In November of 1803, Napoleon's forces were defeated and eliminated his foothold in North America. On January 1st, 1804, the nation became independent and renamed Haiti, becoming the first black republic and country to be founded by its former slaves. Number 7 is the Russian Revolution. Before 1917, Russia was ruled by an imperial government and Tsarist autocracy. The Petrograd Soviet was formed by and gained support of the army, and pressured the Tsar Nicholas II to abdicate. Power was shared between a provincial government and the Petrograd Soviet until the October Revolution. On October 24th and 25th, the leader Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik Party, who were Marxian socialists, stormed the city and occupied government buildings. They formed a new government with Lenin as dictator. This gave rise to communism and the establishment of the Soviet Union in 1922. Number 6 was the Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution in China was started in 1966 by Communist Party of China chairman Mao Zedong 4 years after his failed initiative, the Great Leap Forward, which caused millions of deaths and economic crisis. Mao wanted to regain power and restore true communist ideology, eradicating Western influence. Mass amounts of youths got behind Mao and formed paramilitary groups called the Red Guards. They destroyed heritage sites and traditional national cultural artifacts and were violent to anyone who went against Mao. The government and economy fell apart and the country went into chaos. Over 1.5 million people were killed and millions more were tortured and imprisoned. The revolution caused widespread social destruction and only ended when Mao died in 1976. Number 5 is the Cuban Revolution. The Cuban Revolution took place between 1953 and 1959, when Fidel Castro led the revolt against Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista to end corruption. On July 26, 1953, the rebels tried to raid the Moncada military base, but were stopped and Castro was jailed. After he was released in 1955, he formed the 26th of July movement with other exiles and political prisoners. In November of 1956, the rebels took to the mountains where they learned guerrilla warfare and fought off Batista's troops. In 1958, the rebels set out, taking over towns and gained support as they made their way to the capital, Havana. At least 5,000 people were killed. Batista was finally ousted on January 1st, 1959, and Castro took over. He eventually reformed as the Communist Party with close ties to the Soviet Union and was a central figure to the Cold War. Number 4 is the Iranian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution took place between 1977 and 1979. Iran was a majority Shia Muslim population and was a monarchy headed by the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. He wanted to modernize Iran based on Western practices, but by 1977 his corruption was revealed and protests against his growing dictatorship began. Religious revolutionaries wanted to replace the Shah with an Islamic republic. From August to December of 1978, the violent protests and strikes were so widespread that the country came to a standstill, and 2,781 people were killed. On January 16, 1979, Pahlavi went into exile and his reign collapsed. Khomeini took power and the Islamic Republic was voted in on April 1st. All secular rules and relationships with the West were reversed. Number 3 is the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution took place between the late 18th century and 19th century. It began in Britain, which was able to use their colonies to grow the market for manufactured goods. Before the revolution, society was made up of mostly small, rural communities and was centered around agriculture and manual labor. But when powered machines were introduced, work was done quicker, which was huge for the iron and textile industries. With fewer people needed in the fields, there was mass migration to urban centers to meet the demand of new factory jobs, which changed city infrastructures dramatically. The booming economy grew the banking system and global trade and saw the rise of capitalism. Labor reforms and civil rights also adapted to the changes in society. Number 2 is the Egyptian Revolution. In early 2011, Egyptians were finally fed up with high unemployment rates and government corruption. Protesters wanted President Mubarak out and the return of democracy and free elections. On January 25th, the day of anger, thousands of people gathered in Cairo's Tahrir Square to protest. Over the next 2 days, the protests grew and turned into riots. The army and police became more violent and the government started censoring the news media. Protesters used social media to coordinate and get the truth out about what was really happening, but by the 28th, the government had blacked out cell phone and internet access. 846 people were killed, thousands more were injured, and at least 12,000 were arrested. Mubarak finally stepped down on February 11th and the country was put under military rule. And number 1 is the Digital Revolution. The digital revolution came in the late 1950s and led the way for the informational age. The technical revolution in the 20th century made huge advancements in engineering and general-purpose technologies, specifically electricity, crude oil, and the internal combustion engine. Digital technology quickly made analog technologies obsolete. Digital allowed information to be copied and endlessly duplicated while remaining identical to the original. In a short time, those digital files got smaller and easier to share. After the Second World War, advanced military technologies, particularly in communication and aviation, were filtered to the population. And by the 80s, home computers were popular, followed by the World Wide Web in 1992. In a few decades, the way the world operated and connected changed forever. And because of that, I can exist. I'm not a real person, I'm all digital. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it in the future, subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for my new uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.